The Galactic Council had always considered humans to be a young, unpredictable species. Compared to the elder civilizations, they were barely a century into interstellar travel, yet they had already made themselves impossible to ignore. Humans were clever, bold, and stubborn in ways that fascinated some and frustrated others. They had colonized worlds faster than anyone thought possible, built fleets of ships that could rival the oldest empires, and solved problems that had stumped the galaxy's wisest minds. But to the Council, humans were still a mystery. They were seen as rash, emotional, and often reckless. Some of the elder species had begun to worry that humans' unpredictability could threaten the carefully maintained balance of the galaxy. They argued that these young beings should be controlled, guided, even restricted. On the capital world of Karsoon, the Council convened in a chamber that spanned several kilometers, a place where representatives from hundreds of species gathered to debate the future of the galaxy. The air shimmered with energy fields to accommodate the many forms of life present. Some representatives floated, others slithered, and a few had forms that seemed like nothing more than patterns of light. Yet all were united in one task: deciding humanity's fate. Ambassador Thorn, the human representative, stood silently at the edge of the chamber. He was tall, with a calm presence that somehow drew attention without asking for it. He had listened to the debates, the accusations, and the arguments against his species without interrupting. His eyes moved steadily from one council member to another, but he never raised his voice. The resolution being discussed was clear: limit human expansion. No new colonies without council approval, strict controls on trade, restrictions on human technology that could be used for defense or exploration. Some called it protection, others called it control. Thorn said nothing. He merely watched as the votes passed one by one against his people. When the final gavel fell, signaling the approval of the resolution, Thorn nodded slightly. No speeches, no threats, no pleas for reconsideration. He turned and left the chamber. His departure was quiet, but it carried a weight that none of the council members noticed at first. Within days, humans began to withdraw from the galaxy, but they didn't announce it. There were no proclamations, no explanations, no confrontations. Trade convoys simply stopped arriving. Communication channels went silent. Human colonies that had once buzzed with activity went dark. Their lights extinguished as automated systems sealed the worlds. The galaxy reacted slowly at first. Some species assumed this was temporary, a short protest or a minor disagreement. But as months passed, the truth became undeniable. Humans were gone. Not defeated, not destroyed, just absent. The Council's elder members began to realize how much they had underestimated the humans. The younger species panicked, struggling to maintain systems humans had once managed. Transport networks faltered. Medical facilities went offline. Food shipments dwindled. The galaxy, which had relied on humans for stability, suddenly felt fragile. Humans had not left because they were angry. They had left because they could. They had built their systems to be self-sufficient in ways that no one else could. Ships, colonies, and fleets could continue to operate without them, but only for a time. Every system had been designed with precision and intelligence, yet humans had left no instructions for others to follow. The galaxy had grown dependent on humans, and now it faced the consequences. In the midst of this, the younger species began to understand something about humans that the Council had never realized. Humans were patient, but when they made a decision, it was final. They were capable of action without chaos, of planning without announcement. The silence was not weakness, it was strategy. Some elder council members dismissed it at first, claiming the humans would return when they realized the galaxy could not function without them. But the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The humans' withdrawal was complete and deliberate. Their absence was a statement far louder than any words could have been. Trade routes that had once connected distant star systems began to collapse. Mineral-rich colonies at the edge of the spiral arm went dark, and without human engineers to maintain the delicate mining systems, many were forced to shut down completely. Water-rich worlds in arid sectors began to ration supplies as automated distribution networks, once maintained by humans, failed. Pirates and criminals took advantage of the chaos, moving freely through systems that had previously been patrolled by human fleets. The younger species tried to respond, but their efforts were uncoordinated and ineffective. The humans had not left just ships and colonies. They had left the galaxy dependent on their intelligence, their discipline, and their quiet diligence. In the silence, some began to whisper. They remembered small moments unnoticed at the time. How human engineers could fix systems others had given up on. How human negotiators had solved disputes between species that had been at war for centuries. How human fleets had appeared instantly in crises, turning the tide without fanfare. The galaxy had taken these things for granted. Now it realized that humans had been the unseen force holding it all together. On Karsoon, the Council struggled to maintain control. Meetings were called in emergency sessions, but every attempt to manage the situation failed. Humans had thought of every contingency. Systems failed not due to sabotage or destruction, but because humans had designed them to require their unique understanding to continue operating at full capacity. Some scientists began to study the empty human colonies, hoping to learn from what was left behind. They found incredible technology, ships that could repair themselves, energy networks that adjusted to demand automatically, agricultural systems that could produce food even in the harshest environments. But all of it was complex beyond immediate comprehension, requiring insights and understanding humans had not bothered to share. Meanwhile, whispers turned into concern, and concern into fear. The Council realized that it had underestimated the humans in a way that could not be corrected. They had dismissed a young species as impulsive and naive, and in return, humans had left quietly, without confrontation, leaving the galaxy to face its own fragility. Some younger species began to hope that humans would return to save them, but the humans had already moved on. They were no longer interested in the politics of the Council. They had decided that their future was theirs to shape, and that they would not be controlled by a group that had failed to recognize their value. Even in absence, humans made themselves felt. Systems designed for peace began to falter. Trade collapsed. Food shortages spread. Starports once humming with activity were abandoned. It was not a catastrophe born of conflict, but of loss. The loss of a species that had quietly kept the galaxy running. In the months that followed, Council members began to reflect on what had been lost. Every argument against humans suddenly seemed trivial. Every complaint petty. The very skills and wisdom that humans had demonstrated were only appreciated when they were gone. And in this silence, a truth became clear. Humans had always been underestimated. Not because they were weak, but because they had chosen until now not to prove their strength. They had left not with anger or threat, but with calm, deliberate absence, and in doing so, had shown just how vital they truly were. By the time the first year of the human absence passed, the Council could no longer ignore reality. The galaxy was weaker, more chaotic, and far more vulnerable than it had ever been. The humans had left silently without word, yet their presence, or lack of it, was more powerful than any speech, any argument, or any vote. The silence of the humans spoke volumes, and for the first time the Council felt regret, not for any harm humans might have caused, but for failing to recognize the extraordinary strength of a young species that had quietly carried the galaxy on its shoulders. And somewhere, far from the troubled systems of the Council, humans continued to thrive. They explored new worlds, built new colonies, and advanced their civilization in ways no one could have predicted. They were united, focused, and independent, living by their own rules, guided by their own vision, and fully aware that the galaxy would soon remember what it had lost. The humans' departure was complete, absolute, and permanent. Yet it left a lesson etched across the stars: underestimate humanity at your own peril. The galaxy was changing. Without humans, the delicate balance that had kept star systems running smoothly began to crumble. At first it was small things: a freighter missing its delivery, a colony running short on water, a medical station unable to treat patients because the engineers who had maintained it were gone. But small failures soon multiplied. Systems designed for human hands began to break when other species tried to manage them. Council meetings became desperate affairs. Every representative tried to find a solution, but their efforts were uncoordinated. Some suggested sending fleets to reclaim the lost human colonies. Others wanted to negotiate, to ask humans to return. Yet all these plans failed before they even began. The humans had left quietly, leaving no instructions, no guidance, and no opportunity for anyone else to take their place. The younger species felt the pressure immediately. Mining colonies at the edge of the spiral arm had depended on human technology to extract rare minerals safely. Now, automated machines that had once worked flawlessly began to fail. Energy grids supplying distant colonies flickered and went dark. Water purification systems shut down without warning. Panic spread across star systems as shortages began to appear. Pirates and opportunists seized the moment. Without the presence of human fleets, trade routes were no longer protected. Convoys were intercepted and plundered. The younger species, who had relied on humans for protection and organization, could not respond effectively. In the absence of human intervention, chaos began to grow like a wildfire. In the council chambers of Karzun, elder members debated furiously. They realized their mistake, but the humans had anticipated this long before anyone could act. The humans' designs had been brilliant, complex, and adaptable, yet they were also dependent on human knowledge and understanding. Systems could run themselves temporarily, but over time, without the humans, they began to falter. Some scientists, desperate for a solution, began to study abandoned human colonies. They discovered incredible technology, ships that could repair themselves, fleets that could coordinate without communication, energy networks that balanced supply and demand automatically, even farming systems that could grow food in barren environments. But every discovery came with a challenge. These systems were beyond the understanding of any single species. Even when studied carefully, errors appeared when aliens tried to operate them. Meanwhile, the younger species grew frustrated. They had once depended on humans for guidance, for innovation, and for stability. Now they were left to face problems they could not solve. Entire worlds began rationing water and energy. Starports once filled with activity were abandoned. Colonists on frontier worlds wondered if help would ever come. Whispers began to spread through the galaxy. Some spoke of the humans' foresight. Others spoke of their patience. And many spoke of the silence humans had maintained. Unlike any other species, humans had never protested or begged. They had simply left, leaving the galaxy to understand the full impact of their absence. Council members began to reflect. The humans had not sought revenge, nor had they acted out of anger. Their departure had been deliberate, calm, and controlled. It was not chaos. They had left a galaxy entirely intact but dependent on their unique abilities. The lesson was clear. Humans had been underestimated, and the Council was paying the price. As months passed, the situation worsened. Trade systems collapsed further. Food shortages became critical on distant colonies. Mining operations ground to a halt. Without human engineers, communication networks became unreliable. Star systems that had once thrived under human oversight began to fail, one by one. The Council grew desperate. They sent emissaries to the edge of human space, hoping to reopen communication, to plead, or to negotiate. Most of these missions failed. Ships returned with reports of silent beacons orbiting abandoned stations. Each beacon carried a simple message written in multiple languages. You wished for a galaxy without us. Now you have it. It was a warning and a lesson at the same time. The humans had not left because they wanted to punish anyone. They had left because they were no longer willing to support a galaxy that did not recognize their value. And in doing so, they had shown just how indispensable they had been. Panic and regret spread throughout the council chambers. Every species realized that they had relied on humans for far more than they had thought. Humans had not just built ships and colonies, they had been the invisible force holding the galaxy together. Disputes that once seemed unsolvable had been quietly mediated by humans. Conflicts that might have led to war had been prevented by their diplomacy. Entire systems had thrived because humans had maintained the networks that supported them. Now, with humans gone, the Council saw their own mistakes clearly. They had underestimated a young species that combined intelligence, patience, courage, and creativity in ways no other species could match. They had assumed humans were reckless, emotional, and limited, but they had been wrong. Humans had been wise, deliberate, and strategic, even in silence. Some scientists attempted to replicate human technology, but their efforts failed. Human designs were elegant and efficient, but also subtle and complex. Even the smallest error could render a system useless. Ships would malfunction. Energy grids would collapse. Automated medical facilities could not treat patients properly. The humans had thought of everything, and now the galaxy was learning the hard way that imitation was impossible without understanding. Meanwhile, on the frontier, colonists wondered about the humans. Rumors spread of distant worlds where humans had settled silently, creating new systems, new colonies, and new technologies. Some believed humans had moved beyond the galaxy entirely, exploring areas that no one else could reach. Others believed they were waiting, observing quietly, seeing if the galaxy would survive without them. In the council chambers, the sense of regret grew into despair. Every plan failed. Every fleet deployed without humans faltered. Star systems that had once been stable now teetered on the edge of collapse. Every species realized that humans had not just been part of the galaxy, they had been the glue. And the glue was gone. The council finally understood what humans had always known. Strength was not about domination or control. It was about cooperation, creativity, reliability, and foresight. Humans had taught the galaxy this lesson silently, through action and absence, and now it was too late to undo the consequences. Years passed and the failures continued. Famine spread to water-rich worlds. Mining operations were abandoned. Medical crises could not be handled. Trade routes collapsed. Entire regions of the galaxy became chaotic, lawless, and unmanageable. And still, humans remained absent, thriving quietly on new frontiers, building new colonies, exploring new worlds, and advancing their civilization in ways the Council could not even imagine. Finally, the Council ceased its desperate attempts to restore human systems. They realized the humans had made their choice and would not return. Every species began to see the truth. Humans had been underestimated, and their absence had revealed how dependent the galaxy had been on their ingenuity, discipline, and foresight. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, whispers continued. Some younger species spoke of hope, imagining that humans might return to help someday. Others spoke of fear, knowing the galaxy would never function the same without them. But every voice agreed on one thing. Humanity had proven that they were extraordinary, not through conquest or threats, but through intelligence, cooperation, and quiet strength. The humans' message had been clear all along. They had left without a word, not to punish but to teach, and the lesson was unforgettable. Underestimate humanity at your own peril. Even in absence, humans continued to shape the galaxy. Their technology remained, their systems still influenced events, and their influence lingered, invisible but undeniable. The Council and the elder species now understood the full truth. The humans had never needed the galaxy, but the galaxy had always needed humans. And far beyond the edge of known space, the humans thrived, united and unstoppable, continuing their journey in silence, showing that the strength of a species was not in how loudly it spoke, but in how profoundly it acted. The galaxy had learned a harsh truth. The humans were gone, but their impact would never fade. Every failure, every collapse, every struggle was a testament to what the Council had ignored for far too long. Humanity had left quietly without confrontation, and in doing so, had demonstrated the full power of their species. Power measured not in war, but in wisdom, ingenuity, and resolve. The Council could only watch, regretful and humbled, as the galaxy slowly came to terms with what it had lost.